Stage, Ron Howard, Henry Winkler, Don Most, and Sim Williams. Yay! Yay, these guys!
Pittsburgh. Are these on?
These should all be on.
Oh my God! Look,
QnA. Yes.
Clint Howard and his family are
Oh my
here.
God! Front row.
Hi everybody.
Hey,
We are very happy to be here in Pittsburgh. Ron, I'm Henry.
I'm Anson,
And I'm Don.
and we're from Happy Days.
there you go.
Can I just say that I'm just talking emotionally here. This is the first time that we have appeared this way in 50 years.
And it feels like 50 minutes because we've been having
True.
so much fun, hanging, and this was our sort of our great excuse to come together. So thank you, and by the way, it's just been
Amazing.
a great show.
Everybody
Really
has been
enjoying it.
so warm and wonderful.
All your energy has meant so much
Lot
to
of
us.
hugs.
But we're here.
Yes.
And it's fun.
So I have just a couple quick questions for you.
And what would that be?
It would be.
It better be quick.
They will be very quick. So many years have passed. The show is still so much fun to watch. New generations, more people, they're showing it to their children. What do you think about Happy Days? Just gives it unbelievable staying power.
I think it's pretty good.
There you go. That's a good question.
You know what? I want to tell you that they chose really well. Our producers, first of all, Gary Marshall was like a brilliant creator, a great writer. He picked 22 or 21 writers in the room from 21 years old until 77. They chose a wonderful cast. Some of them, unfortunately, are not any longer on the earth with us. But we played together, we stayed together, and we worked hard together. Nobody thought they were better than anybody else.
I'd say that was a huge key, is that the show evolved as an ensemble, and so that idea of we were like a family. Well, okay, maybe not a family, but we were a unit. We were a community,
Totally.
And also I think for us, it was kind of like our coming of age story. We were just growing up through this process, and we had great mentors. Jerry Paris, our director, Gary Marshall, our boss, some of the key writers. Tom Bosley was like a mentor to all of us, and it was a life experience that's really unlike anything else that I've ever known, and we had great chemistry. We've had fun working together from the beginning, and it never failed us.
And Gary, our mentor, Gary, he also involved us. It was collaborative.
Yeah.
We could make suggestions.
Yeah.
And I think the cast really became, added a lot to the show creatively.
Yeah.
And they listened. And also Gary treated Paramount like a college. He really inspired us to really, shadow directors, come to writing sessions, go to editing rooms, learn more, learn the entertainment business. And also Ron, too, was a huge help. He was already, my God, a star.
Wow.
But your work ethic and professionalism meant so much. We followed suit.
Yeah.
And
But you would never know that Ron was a star.
Yeah.
He was just another member of this wonderful unit, as you called it. I'll tell you the great thing. We're standing in Arnold's. We're waiting at the door to come in and make our entrance. And Ron turned to me and he said, "Yeah, let me ask you a question. What do you think? I want to be a director. What do you think? Do you think I could do that?" And I said, "Ron, knowing you now, he is 18, I am 27. I am the oldest teenager in captivity." And I said, "Ron, knowing you, if you were a brain surgeon, even if I didn't need to, I would be a patient." he went on. I don't know how is your directing career?
Well, I'm always working on it.
You are.
It's you know.
Are you a
very
$1 billion
promising.
director?
Well, I guess I actually.
A $1 billion director. And he has given none of us a cent.
You promised to keep quiet.
So-
The other thing, as Anson was saying, is that Gary was this mentor. So was Jerry Paris. And look, we've all directed.
Yeah.
We've all produced. We've all it was an environment that sort of inspired creativity, but it was also fun.
Right.
And we were of an age where there was a lot of goofing around. There was a lot of like when we were supposed to be rehearsing, we might just decide to take the director Jerry Paris to his chair. We thought that was kind of funny. And we'd all, roll a gaffer's tape around him until he was stuck in his chair. We had a lot of we would throw spitballs.
Spitball
We hit
City, yeah.
spitballs everywhere on the set, on the sound stage. And then it took me a year and a half to get Scott Baio.
He was quick.
He was
quick. Yes.
So I want to go back to the very beginning. The pilot, Love in the Happy Days, originally debuted on Love American Style.
Yes, it did.
Was the series already like green lighted, or was that just a test?
Well, that was a pilot.
Yeah.
What happened was, Ron and I, it was a pilot, but it was more like, I'd say Summer 42. It was a much more
It was softer, more
pilot.
gentle. Yeah.
There was no Fonzie in it, no Ralphie in it. Ron and I were in it, Marion Ross was in it, a different father, a different Joni. And
Laverne and Shirley too.
What?
Well, no, they weren't in it.
No, they weren't. No.
Not in
It
that
was a
one.
totally. It was a much kind of different pilot,
Wow.
and it didn't sell. So during the year, American Graffiti came out with Ron, and Grease is on Broadway, and all of a sudden the '50s becoming a big deal, and they decided to do another pilot for Happiness, but this time make it more like Graffiti. But guess what? They didn't just hire Ron and I again. They thought we might be too old, so we had a screen test this time.
Yeah, we had to come. I had to audition again.
Yes.
In fact, when they sold the show again, they were saying, they called in Gary Marshall and they said, "Well, we want the '50s. Look, Grease is on Broadway. American Graffiti is a huge hit." And he says, "Well, I can't do Gary very well. Maybe you can do it better than I can. We have a show. I did it. It's called Happy Days, and you even got the guy from American Graffiti who's in it." And they said, "Okay, but we got to audition him again." So I had to go in and win the part.
But last time we just read. This time we had a screen test.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a cold business, folks, but it all worked out.
No, but Ron, but I remember you said, have you done screen tests? I go, not really. He goes, they don't give you a lot of time.
Right.
You said, let's find the set and let's block ourselves out and we'll act like we're creating it on the spot.
Right.
We might get more time. So we go down to the set and the painters are just finishing and we blocked out stuff and we were the first up. So it's supposed to be 20 minutes with each couple, 2 hours. And there's Donnie waiting to screen us, all these other people, 2 hours. They're freaking out. We walk out. 2 hours. And we walk by them. And but we lucked out, we got it again.
Yeah.
But Donnie, I have to brag about Donnie. Donnie actually screen tested for Potsy. And they liked him so much they created Ralph for him.
Yeah, that character wasn't originally in it.
Oh, I remember I auditioned.
Yes.
I threw the script up in the air. I sauntered out of the room. They called me on my birthday, October 30th, 1973. I had to audition again for ABC. And I had to go in and they put me in a t-shirt and jeans. They put my hair in a ducktail. And I had a unibrow that they plucked. Ouch.
But the first read-through that we did, I remember Tom Miller, who was a brilliant leader also on the show, came to me, and of course I'd known him from the pilot and these tests and so forth, and we were just getting ready to do our read-through, And there was this character, Fonzie, who was written into the pilot, only had 5 or 6 lines. And he said, we found a guy for Fonzie. At first we thought we wanted somebody like the Paul Le Mat character, like Big John. And we were looking for guys like that, but we found this guy. And he's, I don't know, he's Dustin Hoffman. He's Al Pacino, he's just so charismatic and so laser-like. You're just gonna love this. I thought, okay, great. I met Henry, seemed like a perfectly nice guy. We went into that read-through, and those 6 lines jumped off the page through what Henry was doing. Such an imaginative way. And I'll never, it was like one of those moments. Another moment was when Robin Williams came and created Mork before our eyes.
But here it is. Nobody would take the part. Gary Marshall's son, who was 9 at the time, said it would be great if you had an alien on the show. So they wrote this alien. But nobody seemed right or would say yes to the part. We rehearsed Monday morning, 10 o'clock, until Friday at 4. Then we did it in front of a live audience. All of a sudden, Wednesday, at about 11, this young man comes on. Hello. Hello. And he's very shy.
And he has suspenders.
He has suspenders. And finally, they've gotten somebody. We're going to do it on Friday at 4. We've lost a lot of rehearsal time. This young man picked up this script, and it was like a volcano went off on the soundstage. And I realized at that moment I had 2 jobs. Keep a straight face, know my lines, and get out of his way. Because there was no way you were going to compete with this brilliant fellow.
Yeah, it was stunning.
Don has a funny story about his screen test.
What?
Your screen test. Tell him about and how the girl ended up being Harvey Miller.
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah, we were talking about the screen test, and it was pretty intimidating, I have to say, when, like Anson said, when Ron, and because all these other actors, meaning, there were 6 other guys, and we're saying, how's Ron Howard in there? Because we all knew who Ron was, and he's a big star. So it was kind of, why is he testing? He's testing. And then we didn't know who Anson was, but then they were in there for so long. And we're feeling a little bit like deflated already before we ever started. But so for me, I had to wait because I was over 18. And if you were under 18, they only have you for so many hours. So they're gonna get them out before anybody else. So they made me go last because there were 2 or 3 of us over 18, but there were some that were like 17. So I had to wait before I got to do my scene. And it gets tougher the longer you're sitting around waiting. So I go in and do the scene, and the scene felt pretty good. I felt, okay, I did all right. But now, they said, okay, now we're gonna do improvisations. So what it's gonna be is we have a young girl, and you're gonna improvise that you're going out on a date with her, your first date with this girl. So they give you the setup, and then they leave it to the 2 actors to just do an improv. So again, I have to go last, and it's taking forever, and then finally they come up to me, and they said, well, we had to let Kathy, the girl, we had to let her go because she's not 18. So I said, so what am I doing? He said, you're going to do an improv with Harvey Miller, this 38-year-old Jewish writer on the show.
That's the date?
And I went, what? I'm doing an improv with him? And I felt like I was like kneecapped, and I had no chance. And I went in and I did the improv with Harvey, and I mean, he was pretty funny, and it probably went better than I thought, but I thought at this point I had no chance in hell. And by the time they got to the interview, because then they interviewed every actor, they wanted to see your personality and who you were, I guess. By the time I got to that, because I had to wait, I felt there's no chance I'm getting this. And I was kind of like, I didn't care. You know, it was like, yeah, they're asking me questions, and probably that might have worked in my favor, because when you don't feel that need, if you're showing that you're needy and you really need this part, it doesn't work well for you. I literally almost didn't care, because I felt there's no chance. But then I got the call, and they said, you didn't get the part of Potsy, but there's a small part in the pilot, and they want to make you a regular in the show, and you would play Ralph.
And Jerry Paris, our director, loved Donnie. I mean, he loved us all. He was great. But he just connected with Donnie in a way. And like, I think I remember the first time that you did the I Still Got It, and I think explain to me how that happened.
Yeah, it was because, hold on, I need to drink something. Really something, not water.
Can you share?
Maybe. Anyway, Jerry was an amazing guy. Just an amazing. He was the next door neighbor on Dick Van Dyke's show, and he directed most of the episodes. He was a fantastic creative genius as well, and a wonderful guy, a mentor for us. So Jerry, he was more like a Ralph character than I was. I mean, he was always cracking jokes, and if he'd get a really good laugh and score, he would say something, which I'm not going to say what it is, but he always would say this. So one day, it was in the fourth season, because we're shooting in front of an audience, and it was a scene where I was supposed to come in. Richie was right there, I think Potsy was there, and I came in saying some kind of joke, and then they'd laugh, and then there was something else that happened in the script. Well, I went up to Ron. I had an idea. So I went up to Ron and I said, I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to say, but it's not in the script. So after you guys laugh, I didn't want you to be thrown too much.
Right.
So I said, I'm going to say something. And he said, okay, all right. So I come into the scene, I say what Ralph says, they start cracking up, and I go, I still got it. That was Jerry's line.
Yeah.
That was Jerry's line, and I said, it just felt like it was perfect. And so I stole it from Jerry, but I think he'd be very happy. I'm sure he was happy. He was laughing like crazy when that happened.
I loved it when they started, especially when we started going in front of the audience. They wanted us to all have a catchphrase. They sit on it. Became a big thing, and it pretty much it would go from either some little personal quirk that you had that the writers liked, or something that would get a big laugh. Like the first time that I did Blueberry Hill, I just got a big laugh from the audience, and so they decided that every time I thought I was confident or had done well with a girl, I would come in singing, "I found my thrill."
You still got it.
But you know, the biggest of all, the one that started all of that was me.
But I want to say that Ron has been working since he was about 3.
Yeah.
Okay. I was trained in the East in drama school. Donnie came from the East. Anson, you're from California.
Yeah.
Ron had never worked in front of a live audience in all of the time that he was a professional. We went from a single camera, which meant we made like a little movie, and we were almost canceled, and Gary had an idea, Gary Marshall. We would do it in front of a live audience. The first night, I believe you walked by either the makeup room or the wardrobe, and you saw that Ron was almost vomiting.
No, just nervous.
Nervous. The man has never worked.
He's a little purple.
Never worked in front of a live audience. They called action, and this man came alive. You would never know that it was his first time, and from then on, it was clear sailing.
In fact, I really came to love it and I learned so much. And later, as I became a director, which was the dream that I'd been pursuing since I was a young teenager, that I was so grateful because we had that experience. And as I did comedy, I had a better understanding of the rhythms, the way jokes worked. Of course, Jerry was a great teacher, but all of you guys were, and Tom Bosley, because it was so much about timing and staging and the way it worked, and I felt so protected and safe. And again, that gets back to the chemistry of the show.
And respect.
You were asking, what made the show work. I worked on the show, I watched the show, I was appreciative, audiences liked it. I hadn't really watched an episode in ages and ages. And during COVID, I happened to bump into an episode and I just settled back and actually watched the episode. And I thought, oh, that's why that show went on for 11 years. That's why it was a #1 show. We were good. Very gratifying.
Excellent. We have about 15 minutes left. Can we get some questions from the
love
audience?
it.
Sure.
Let's get some questions from the audience. Raise your hand. It's going to come around. We have about 15 minutes. Let's make them quick.
Okay.
Okay, that was great.
That was nice. Good job. Let's go.
Talk about the Happy Days softball team.
He beat you to it. The Happy Days softball
Okay, but
team.
wait a minute. This young man
All right.
had a question.
Fire away.
Do them both together.
Gotcha.
So, as legends in the industry, can you tell me what it was like and your best memories of working with Pat Morita and Penny Marshall, who were true legends as well?
Well, two very different personalities. Pat was incredibly soulful, had a wide range of noises that he could make, but had a very emotional life. I mean, he'd been in an internment camp during World War II. He had a history of prejudice and so forth, and yet he was so joyful about comedy, and he loved creating. And again, he and Jerry Paris had a similar wavelength because they were both just genuinely funny, inventive people. And I thought Pat so loved the Arnold character and so loved that as he became slowly but surely such a really like a potent weapon. He would come in and just get hard laughs.
And he really broke the glass ceiling in terms of comedian.
Yeah.
I mean, he really, broke
and
through.
then for him with Karate Kid and the rest of his career, it was so gratifying to see that because he deserved it.
And then Gary Marshall had the idea that if we play together, we would stay together. He always wanted to own a sports team. So he created the Happy Days softball team. I have never been good at a sport because I don't have good eye-hand coordination because I am so dyslexic.
Generally, they say that hand-eye coordination.
That's what I didn't have. I didn't have that either. And in between scenes, literally, they taught me, because they were all athletes, they taught me to pitch. And then as we went out into the field and played first in Hollywood against agencies, other shows and everything, Clint Howard was my catcher and would talk the ball into his mitt. He would literally tell me, show me where I had to pitch the ball. Then we traveled America as a team. And then for the USO, we went to Japan and to all through Germany for the American troops. So we really became a team. And Ron bought me my first mitt that I ever owned in my life. And Anson got me for my birthday my first bat.
And we loved that. It was so unifying, and it was a great experience. And yes, we did recruit Clint as a kind of a ringer who was an excellent baseball player. And it was exciting because one time we were playing, you'll appreciate this, we were playing in Philadelphia before a Phillies game.
Yes.
And it was packed. and we were playing, and usually we would play against disc jockeys and other sort of game show celebrities. This time they had athletes mixed in too. And Hal Greer, for example, the great basketball guard, others, football players and things like that. And I looked at this lineup, and I thought, we usually win these games, but I don't know. And I mentioned it to Clint, and Clint just said, Henry could get him out. And Henry got him out. And we won that game 2-1.
That's right.
The pitching duel.
Now here's the thing. All I could do was pitch. I couldn't catch. So when the ball was hit to me, I turned my body, I stopped the ball, and I was black and blue on my left side for 7 years.
One thing about Gary, he really felt too, he said, you'll always have the back of your teammate. And he really felt that playing ball, having these experiences around the world would also come to the set.
And it did.
And it did. I think it's a major reason we're so close today.
Yeah.
I really do. Had a huge effect on our friendship.
Yeah.
Next question, please. What do we got? Next question? Okay. There you are. Thank you. There you go.
I just wanted to say it was a real honor meeting all of you guys today.
Thank you.
And I just want to say you show good taste.
And have great manners.
I'm just curious, your favorite episode?
I loved every one of them.
Yeah.
I was so happy to be on this show that put out such good feelings into the world that I got to be with them every day, 5 days a week for 10 and a half years. I don't have a favorite. I really don't. I loved every one of them. I have a favorite child. I just can't tell you who it is.
Connie?
Well, for me, the reason, there's two reasons. It was a great script. There's two episodes, but I'm going to mention one first. It was a great script, but it was also it was the third season. It might have been the second episode of the third season, but it was the first show. Up until then, my character had grown and got bigger and bigger, but it was still as a supporting character, and the storylines revolved around something else that was central. But this episode, it was the first one that revolved around my character. So I took it, I remember that week, preparing. I got so intense about it. And I was preparing, I don't think I ever told you these guys, but in it, I had to be really scared, which Ralph got a lot, and be like gonna run away and all this. So I would go out at night and sneak around in alleyways and stuff like that, and
Oh my
and
God.
really get into the feeling of what it was like to be scared out of your mind and trying to get away. So it was an episode that somebody had absolutely demolished Fonzie's motorcycle. They totally had, it was in pieces. And as I say to Ron in the bathroom, Ron says to me, but a piece of the bike in the mailbox. Ralph, how did you get the piece of the bike in the mailbox? And I was going crazy. But, where was the train of thought I was going? But anyway, so that episode, because I was, of course, the guy who demolished it, and Ralph was scared out of his mind, and and Richie says, well, where are you going? Because I came in with a suitcase into Arnold's, and he goes, where are you going, Ralph? I said, west. I was getting the hell out of Dodge. So, and it was so great because Henry, of course, had just as big a part in that episode, and it was so great working with him in that kind of manner, and that was one of my favorites. Well, my favorite. But the second one is when we pretended to be Tunisian camel jockeys, I think.
Somebody did a great artwork of that.
Mark, j'ai vu shoe, kick, lock it, when I'm plump, right?
Wow. What about your favorite episode?
Well, my second favorite, well, I don't, gosh, it's hard. I love the Saving Fonzie's Life episode.
Yeah.
That was,
Yes.
it was wonderful. And I love singing to Joni episode.
Yeah.
But my favorite episode was his episode. Every time I saw that show, I just cracked me up. I just was so entertained. So I think it was Don's episode, Smashing up Fonzie's Bike.
Very hard, because there was a whole range of episodes that I really liked, and a lot of them funny, and I enjoyed, especially as we started to have an audience, just feeling the laughs and being able to control that. But I left the show after 7 seasons.
Oh my God!
And began directing.
That was a moment. There was a phone booth by the door next to the donuts, and it never rings. And then they said, Henry, there's a phone call, and it's Ron. He said, I just have to tell you, it's going to break in the news in about 10 minutes. I'm not coming back. I thought my life was over.
Well, it wasn't. The show went on for years after that, and we've remained very close. But I think, in a lot of ways, occasionally my character would come back, and I think those are my favorite episodes, because it was a return. And even though I had left to kind of go on my own adventure of trying to become a director and make movies and so forth, I still felt a part of it all. But it also reminded me just how great those years where I was there every week with them was. So it sounds a little corny, but when you asked that question, I immediately went to the episodes where I was coming back and sort of feeling that warmth and excitement, and also just the fun of the show and the laughs of making the show and hearing the audience laugh at what we did.
One of the last episodes we did, Ron came back and said, now I'm leaving for good. And at the door, I was saying goodbye to him, and I started to cry. And that was Henry crying, saying goodbye to Ron.
But it wasn't goodbye, because a few years later, I had a chance to make my first studio movie, Night Shift. We had a good script. Studio really wanted to make it, but we were having casting trouble, and they wouldn't do it without a star. And finally they said to me, they said, do you think Henry Winkler would be in this movie with you? And I said, well, I don't know. He could play either part. They said, we don't care. If we get Henry Winkler in the movie, we'll make the movie. So I went to Henry, and I said, and we had a lunch in the Paramount commissary, and I said, there's this opportunity for this movie. Gans and Mandel wrote it. Lowell had been one of the producers of Happy Days, and I said, you choose the part, but I'd love to work with you on this. And in a day, he called back and said, I'd love to be in the movie, and chose to do it, and it was a green light from there. And then we went out and found Michael Keaton, who was an unknown, but because they had so much, they were so satisfied with Henry in the starring role, they were willing to cast an unknown. And that made it possible for Michael to really come through with that role. So I don't think I would be sitting here with the credits that I have if Henry hadn't said yes to that movie. And so
I don't believe that to be true, but because I had my choice of playing the roles, and I thought, well, for the last 10 years I have been flamboyant, I'm going to choose to play Richie. And so I played Chuck.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes left. We have time for about one more question.
Somebody in the back.
Someone in the back.
In the back here?
I guess.
oh, there we go.
There we go. Last question.
Hi, this question is for Henry. How was your time on the show Better Late Than Never?
Better late than never. I was called into NBC Universal. They said, we'd like you to be executive producer. This is what we're going to do. We're going to travel the world. We're going to, Bill Shatner was already on the board. Then Terry Bradshaw, and then the late George Foreman, heavyweight champion of the world. We traveled all over Asia and then Europe. And I went on this journey with these funny men. I will now imitate those three men for you. George Foreman had some kind of a tic. It was an amazing thing. No matter where we were in the world, he would sit down. He was out like a light. Bill Shatner, we are in the cone of silence here, am I right?
Yeah.
Because if he tells me he's heard this, I'm coming back and looking for you. Bill Shatner has read every book ever written by a human being, and he wants you to know what's on every page. Terry Bradshaw won the Super Bowl 4 times. We're on the sands of the beach, right? We're on the sands of the beach of Thailand. We're playing football with some young Thai men. He throws the ball. I catch a football for the first time in my life. He's excited. I'm excited, and it takes about 20 minutes to get that ball out of my chest.
We got time for one quick question. One quick question. We got time for one quick one. Make it quick. One question. Quick one.
Hi, guys. In the early years of the show, the tone was a lot different, and then it changed dramatically. As actors, how was it adjusting to that change, and did you prefer one acting style over the other?
Oh, gosh, I mean, again, we almost were canceled.
Yes.
And that's when they decided to go live audience. And I think that's when we became alive.
I think that's when the show really took off, and from a performance standpoint, and it was part of the strategy of going in front of a live audience was also to take advantage of this phenomenon that was occurring in that first season and a half, which was Fonzie was emerging as this, this like great pop culture figure. And this was going to be a chance for them to feel the audience responding to Henry's charisma and what he had created with the Fonz, and it really, really worked. So it was a different tone. As I said, I was more comfortable personally with the single camera. It was more like the Andy Griffith Show had been done. But I was so grateful as I began to understand the excitement of the live audience, and of course the show climbed into the top 10, and then I think in our next season it became the #1 show.
I also think it was a better show because we had a week to rehearse.
And the
we
writing.
could keep rewriting and rewriting. So it was a way to really perfect the show.
Now for Donnie, who'd done a lot of theater, and Tom, who'd done a lot of theater, I think you guys were kind of excited about it in a way.
Yeah, and Henry had done a lot of theater too, and yeah, we were excited. The thing was, I think the reason that Gary, and I think Jerry was part of it, because I remember Jerry thinking we had a perfect cast to do this kind of a show.
Yeah.
And the thing is that the big shows then, the big comedies, was All in the Family, which was shot in front of an audience, Maude, which was shot in
Mary
front
Tyler Moore.
Tyler Moore, Good Times, which was against us. So they said, it seemed like we had to convert to that to compete with that style. So I was excited because doing live theater is different, and it's exhilarating, and it's very exciting. So and Jerry had directed that style in his first year directing the Dick Van Dyke Show. He won the Emmy as Best Comedy Director. So we had a perfect team to do it. And I always say, because Henry said this earlier, he said, we worked hard. Yes, we had fun. We had a great time, and we goofed around at times. But all the cast were really talented people working very hard to make something look easy. And that's why because we respected each other professionally,
Right.
and we did take it seriously, but we were able to balance it because we got along so well. But in the 3-camera format, it did sort of blossom.
Well, that is all the time we have. I know it breaks my heart.
Thank you.
But please,
Thank you very much.
the happy
See you
days.
tomorrow.
Tomorrow. If you did not sign up for the 4